2023 is just about over, and well, this is our year in review. Marty, welcome back. glad you came.
Merry Christmas, Clyde. Hope you had a good Christmas.
Yeah, a little bit of time out of your vacation with your family, pulled you off to the side to do this year in review. Let's have a look at Canada over the past 365. What's been going on in our country? And I wanted to start it off with a little strange one. This is really, really odd. We've seen all kinds of weird stuff from Justin Trudeau out of left field all over the place, no matter what he's doing. But I think he's trying to do, like, Pierre Poilievre has really gained a lot of popularity by going on social media and going out there and putting himself out there to smaller creators. And I think Justin Trudeau is trying to do a bit of the same. He went on this guy's podcast, and I'd never heard of this guy ever before. And I'll just pop this up here. This is the podcast that he was on.
Yeah.
And I mean, not a lot of people even know about this. Only 21,000 souls even heard about this, enough to click on it and went and checked it out. I had actually looked this guy up. He's Terry DeMonte, and this is his website. He gives a thing to all of his social medias that all have very little following. It's unbelievable. But apparently he used to work for CBC, and he's had a long career in that. But that's where he is. I wanted to show this segment out of this clip just to show how out of touch Trudeau is still at this point. He could just, talk to somebody and perhaps get a little bit of a taste of what's going on in Canada, but he refuses to. And this is a segment out of this I just had to share.
Are you ever on social media? Because I see it. My wife and I see it, and I'll say to Jess, Jesus Christ, look at this. Look at this ugliness. Do you see it? And how do you cope with that?
First of all, yeah, I see it. I mean, you can't
not.
Even though I don't spend much time at all on social media,
right.
I very much know it's out there.
Yeah.
It's out there.
You're a little busy.
No, but every now and then, we'll see it. But inevitably, my reflection is not, ooh, that's about me, or that's this. It's about them. Like, my question is always, well, what is going on in this person's life that they are that angry, that they are that lost, that they are needing to, lash out to this level? And how can I help them, but how can I help create a society in which they are not going to be that angry? How can we contribute to reassuring people about?
Marty, you're just angry. I'm just angry. And how can Justin Trudeau create a society that will make us less angry?
Like, why would I be angry at high food prices and high gasoline prices and the fact that my kids can't live in the house and have to live in my basement? Like, why am I angry at that? Like, shame on me. Yeah, shame on me. and I mean, I look at that interview, and a couple of things come to mind. First of all, I know that in the last 2 months, Trudeau hired a new guy to help reshape his image. All I could say is, Justin, fire that guy. Okay, just fire that guy right now, because whoever you hired, that interview is being dissected, and you're going to see memes made out of that interview for the next 3 weeks, because that's how precious it is. Like, there's so many nasty moments in there. That's the first thing that comes to mind. The second thing that comes to mind is Justin is having to. Pierre got an award last week by the Canadian press, and they cited the fact that he's playing the social media. So now Trudeau is forcing himself, he's distancing himself. And he even said it in an interview with Rosie Barton the other day. He said something like, oh, I'm not going to plaster myself on YouTube or whatever. But we also know he's in a fight, right? He's in a fight with YouTube or Google and Meta and Facebook. So he's digging a hole. He can't go down the same path as Pierre when it comes to social media. So he's picking these obscure media that are trying to be more credible. I don't know. I can't make sense of it. I mean, it's desperation, right? It's desperation. By the way, the Rosie Barton interview, like, he sat there smug, looking like, hey, this is going to be easy. And I was absolutely blown away by the fact that Rosie Barton wasn't just lobbing softballs at him. She asked him questions. Like she said the same thing that, they were hinting here. People don't like you, Justin. What do you have to say about that? And then it's like the look on his face, like, yeah,
Probably the most
people
hated
don't
man
like-
in Canada now. I wouldn't put that as like a thing that he wouldn't win if there was an actual vote on that.
I went to the University of Ottawa, so I went to school in Ottawa. I graduated in 1990, and Brian Mulroney was the prime minister at the time, and Brian Mulroney could literally walk from 24 Sussex to Parliament Hill on a Saturday night, and people would just say, Mr. Mulroney, and Mike shake hands with him, and if you look closely, Brian had like a security guard over his right shoulder somewhere, one or two guys in the background. Trudeau can't go for a walk anywhere. There's no way he can go for a walk. And yeah, he can't do any introspection, trying to figure out why people hate him. He's like, he truly in his own mind thinks that he walks on water. Like it's a weird, I'm not a psychologist, but he does look like he suffers from a full blown case of narcissism, where he truly thinks that what he's doing is in the best interests of the country, and that he's doing good, and that he's brilliant. And I don't know, he's completely incapable of introspection, of pausing for a moment at something he's done. And that's what those are the questions that he was asked by Rosie Barton. Like, is it possible? She words it really nicely. Like, is it possible, Justin, that, your policies aren't working? Is it possible that people don't like what you're doing? And he can't say no. He can't say yes.
No,
he can't.
and that's what made me laugh about this one, was because his knee-jerk immediate reaction is, there's something wrong with all those people out there. It's not that everything that he's been doing and the predictions that came that this would all happen came true, and that's why people are angry. No, they're angry because they're irrational, and that's really what I think is going on in his head. It's really crazy. It's really crazy that's where we are here in Canada.
Yeah, and then he goes over the top, like Rosie, I think, was the other one. Well, I mean, there's been 3 or 4 interviews in the last couple of weeks asking him, will you run again? And he keeps saying things like, I have unfinished work. I do it for the people. In one interview, he literally said, like, I do it for the young people. He went back to 2015. It's like, when I got elected in 15, I made a promise to the young people. I'm like, they're the ones that hate you the most.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like like a 70-year-old person might be upset that their old age security ain't exactly keeping up, or their pension's a bit at risk, but you haven't fundamentally wrecked the lives of somebody who's, he's made my life miserable, but he hasn't wrecked my life. But I look at my sons who might have voted for him in 2015. Are they happy with him? No. Like, he's made their life a living hell. They're the ones who won't be able to afford it. No, yeah.
Well, and speaking of promises that cannot be kept, the thing that's going on around social media right now is UBI, and everybody's talking about this, and this is a real issue in Canada, because they're actually talking about bringing a universal basic income that everybody will get. What they're saying, about $2,000 a month. This is rich, poor, old, young, no matter what you are, you're gonna get $2,000 a month. And here's a tweet that went out recently. This is from Wall Street Silver, talking about this stuff a lot. But this is some of the ministers in Canada, bureaucrats, by the way, discussing what's going to happen to all of us.
Introduce a framework to develop a guaranteed livable basic income. We are struggling throughout this country with homelessness, food insecurity, poverty, health, mental health issues, and this is one way that we could start to look at these issues. It's not the only way, but it's certainly a key way.
And I think we've gathered a great deal of data to show the positive consequences of offering people the opportunity.
Half of Canadians are pessimistic about their personal finances. A quarter of low-income families cannot pay for monthly expenses.
Introduce a framework.
So because people can't pay for their bills, they can't pay their bills, and they're financially insecure, they're saying, let's bring on communism. I mean, what else do you call this? I mean, I don't know what else you could call this.
I mean, they floated it during COVID, right? That's what CERB was. Like, when you think about it, what did CERB stand for?
The COVID
emergency relief.
Canada emergency
COVID
relief.
emergency, something like that. But yeah, that's exactly what it was. It was, hey, I mean, when I see them float an idea like that right now, again, they're causing a problem, and they're going to propose a solution that's going to make the problem worse. That's that, and I don't think they're proposing this with a genuine intent of solving a problem. I think that this is just one of those. This is something that appeals to a lot of people. This is something that appeals to the liberal base, right? Hey, we're going to give you free money. So this is them getting ready for an election and trying to feel out some of the things that will resonate with Canadians. Because but I mean, I like, if it was done as a solution, I'd fight it hard tooth and nail, because I don't think it's a solution to a problem. I think it makes things worse. I think a universal basic income, to me, makes things worse than, it's well, look at the consequences. That is one of the reasons the country is facing so much inflation and so many problems. Like during COVID, the government printed out $2,000 checks and handed them out to 5 million people with barely a question asked. And they gave them all those checks, and it ended up being, they dumped $300 billion into the economy. And what does that do? That free check that everybody gets is worthless. That's what economically would happen, right? I mean, it's, play the game at your house, play the game with 5 people in a room, and give everybody a $20 bill and say, hey, trade among yourselves. Well, every item's worth $20 because, and it's all meaningless, because the first transaction that everybody will do will be a $20 transaction. And after one round of transaction, one guy in the corner of the room has $100, everybody else has nothing, and there's no more trade that goes on. So giving everybody free money doesn't work. I will bounce one idea. It could work, I would say, in sort of 2 circumstances. One is if you eliminated a whole shit ton of programs, right? You give everybody whatever, call it $20,000, but you eliminate unemployment insurance, old age security, child benefits, whatever. Like, you'd have to eliminate entire programs and say, from now on, this is all you get is your 20,000 and no more other programs. I could perhaps swallow the pill that way.
Yeah, but I would even argue that if you did that, it would basically make that 20 grand or the $2,000 a year or a month, that would be the new zero. Anyone who doesn't have $2,000 is now sub-zero. Everyone is below the point, and then it creates a whole new class of poverty for people who don't want to go along with the system, don't want to give out their information, don't want to give out this stuff, concede to it. Maybe they have to concede to digital ID to accept it in order to get it. And maybe you have to concede to a digital currency in order to get your
I mean, I'm not saying I'm absolutely not in favor of it, but I'm saying if they shoved it down our throat and went down a path, that would be one of my demands. You got to get rid of social programs. The other thing is, how do we fund this? And if it's only funded by my taxes and your taxes, then it's just a wealth transfer, and I'm 100% against it. There's no way to make that palatable.
Well, there's no other way.
If it was funded, there is another way. Like, if here in Alberta, we could fund something like this from, let's say, the oil revenues. Like, if you guaranteed me that it only came from a form of royalty that the province collects and is redistributed, then I would see it sort of as a dividend check, which Alaska, a lot of states don't call it a universal basic income. They call it a dividend, right? There are places in the world that will exploit their resources and then give it truly back to the people to whom the resource belongs. But yeah, I noticed that this week. All of a sudden, my timeline was flooded with UBI, and to me, it's a non-starter, but it's being floated by the Liberals as a potential campaign.
Well, I wish it was just a partisan issue, but it seems to not be. Here's Melissa Lantzman talking about this in an interview she did a while back. She's lost a lot of weight.
That's old. That's an old interview.
Yeah, this is an old interview, but this is her talking about this.
Well, there's some political parties now saying, Melissa, that they want to have this as a steady thing, the minimum income.
Well, you know what? I actually do somewhat agree with that. And there's a conservative position on this. The universal income benefit, the thing that you're talking about, where you're giving people a living wage, that's going to come. And it could be that by a different name.
Doesn't sound very conservative to me, Melissa.
I actually think conservatives can own this, because you know what it does do? It does take government out of the mix of a bunch of means-tested programs thrown out of Ottawa by a bunch of bureaucrats, and gives everybody that that thing that they need to get back to work, and we put that onto people. And we believe in them, and we try to get them out of poverty.
How are future governments going to pay for that?
Well,
because the revenue's in now.
I think that any government that wants to bring this forward is a government that's going to need a mandate from the people, because I don't think the Liberals have the mandate to do that in Ottawa right now. I don't think that any party necessarily has a mandate to spend into the future the way that they've been spending during this pandemic.
Yeah, well, they did.
She's right. I mean, she's a politician who's basically saying, which I want politicians to say, which I want intelligent people to say, yeah, there is merit, right? So there's a potential benefit somewhere in there. So she said basically the same thing I said, right? If you get rid of 15 other programs, that's one of the merits. The other merit that the Conservatives and many economists have brought up is what they call the negative income tax, right? So
it's not the same thing. Yeah,
it's not the same thing, but they can sort of weave it in, and instead of giving everybody $20,000, you increase the credit, the portion that we each keep, but then that doesn't benefit somebody who doesn't pay, and blah blah blah. I mean, but I'm not for it, especially not in Canada, because one of the things that I find upsetting about Canada right now is literally our level of debt. I find it obscene, and that Canada ranks highest in the world in terms of national debt by the governments and personal debt, and then we're in the top 3, top 4, and that's embarrassing. I mean, to me, that's we're living beyond our means. We're borrowing from future generations, and we're being lazy about developing the resources and the energy and the things we have here, and giving ourselves a lifestyle without earning it. I find that lazy and despicable, and I don't like it. In fact, driving here this afternoon, I was listening to a TV radio show where the guy was talking about the 1960s and the kinds of programs that the Diefenbakers and the Pearsons were proposing, and the Canada of today compared to the Canada of the 1950s coming out of the Second World War. My God, our grandparents are turning in their graves right now, what we've become. It's sad. It's really sad.
It really is sad. And
let's go on to something more fun.
Well, I was just going to say that a universal basic income, proposing this at the same time as bringing in 500,000 new people a year and promising them that same universal basic. I don't think that's possible. It's just not sound fiscal policy at that point to go on with that. But hey, let's get into this. So we were talking about before we got into it, what are some of the stories of the year? What are some of the big things that we thought were some of the more poignant things that happened in 2023, and we're moving into 2024. So what are some of the big things that happened? And a bunch of different categories we can assign to this. We have the stupidest thing of the year, and then probably, then you have like the real more important story of the year. What would you think some of the more important things this year were, or poignant at least?
Well, to me, close to home to me is Danielle Smith's victory, politically, and she's having a tough time, but I do think it's an important victory. I said it before she got elected, that she needs to win for the good of Canada. So this, she and unfortunately it falls on her to battle Trudeau and Guilbeault and what others, but I think that's a genuine, real, for me, that's a victory. In fact, it was one of the only victories vote-wise that I've had in years. I've lost every election since 2015. So Danielle's election to me was a breath of fresh air, a true happy story in Canada. And would Ontarians see it the same way? Maybe not today, but hopefully someday they'll or others, but yeah, that was you. What was your big story for the year?
So my big story, I was stewing over it because there was so much that took place. I mean, there's so many new bills that passed through the government, some really groundbreaking ones that are way overreaching, way stepping the bounds of this, and then also the interference from China, all that stuff that came up that we heard about, allegations of Han Dong. With the two Michaels asking Chinese officials to keep them in jail for a longer time because it would look better for them politically. Yep. Those are the allegations. I'm not making allegations of my own here. And then all of that And I still come back to the housing crisis as the biggest issue in Canada this year for me. And I keep falling back on this. Maybe it's my bias because I have a mind that just can't ignore economics, and I'm always thinking about economic situations and what's going on with the economy. I want to make it in Canada. I'd like to be able to run businesses and have my family and my children succeed in Canada. And the housing crisis has been the biggest thing, I think, since 06. And I've been talking about it since about 06, not on this YouTube channel, but with my friends and with people. But this is why I largely stayed out of the housing economy. I really feel ripped off. I really feel ripped off because I've wanted to start my journey into home ownership and all of that stuff. And I've been waiting for this bubble to pop, and they just won't allow it. They just won't allow this bubble to pop. And unfortunately, I think that the way moving forward is for the bubble to pop, interest rates to come up higher, and a lot of people are going to lose a lot of the wealth that they've gained, or be put into some really seriously bad financial situations. But this is why I think this is the biggest story of the year. It hits everybody. It doesn't matter where you are politically. It might matter where you think we need to go, but when you look at the facts and you look at the reality of the situation and where we do need to go, it's a bipartisan issue, and it's going to affect everyone: liberals, New Democrats, and conservatives alike.
Yep. Yeah, no, I think we're gonna and it caught people off guard when it shouldn't have. Right? I mean, most of the housing bubble should have been, definitely shouldn't have caught any politicians off guard. Like we said, I mean, they have the data at their fingertips, so this shouldn't have been caught off guard. I understand that a few Canadians got caught off guard. I mean, the reality is most Canadians haven't lived through a really big downturn. Some people will say 2008 or some of the other ones, but this is different. It's not quite a downturn, but it's an economic crisis of sorts, right? It's a housing crisis, economic crisis, and people haven't lived through one of these in the past. So I think, this one's, and it's not done, right? I don't think we've seen the worst of it. I really don't. I mean,
no. I think we're kicking the can down the road. That's the problem, is like with the Bank of Canada and the political pressure to keep the interest rates only at 5%. I really believe that the Bank of Canada, they even know. Tiff Macklem, he knows that the interest rates need to go way higher because they were way too low for way too long. And this is the investment that took place because of it. And I feel really bad for a lot of the Canadians that got involved by falling for the frenzy. You see this frenzy of people going in, buying houses, making hundreds of thousands of dollars just for owning a piece of property for a year and then selling it. Like, that should be a warning sign for a lot of people. Get rich quick schemes are just that. They're schemes.
They're just that, yeah.
And a lot of people were sold a bill of goods and told, get into it. There's no better opportunity than now. And anybody really holding a huge mortgage is in for it. That's really what's the situation.
Yeah. We'll see what happens with that one. I mean, closer to home, I just finished. I was just up north having a family weekend, and one of my nephews lives in Germany right now, and it's interesting to get his perspective coming back to Canada, because in Germany, the prospect of owning a house, they gave up on that years and years ago, but it's a country the size of Alberta with 60 million people. So, they got problems on it, kind of like you when you go visit Japan, right? Do people in Japan own homes, or
they're giving them away?
What?
I'm not kidding. There are countryside homes where they just can't offload them. They have rules, serious rules, where outsiders can't buy houses in Japan. They're just not allowed. So they're trying to get people from the city. They have incentive programs. Yeah.
Okay.
They have incentive programs to get people out of the city and into countryside homes. Not kidding.
Wow.
They have the opposite problem as us.
Wow. Okay, cool. That was my real story. Let's go on to funny story. What do you think was the funniest story? I mean, Canada was a gong show in 2023, but any particular funny story stands out for you?
Well, I don't know.
How are you going to
I
remember?
mean, maybe it's my
2023?
dark sense of humor, but I think it's the story of judges and people appointed to go after Trudeau. That's my comedy of the year. Is just the picks of all the people that were chosen, whether it was Rouleau in the Rouleau Commission for investigating the Emergencies Act, or it's Justice Johnston. That's Justin Trudeau's growing in his childhood memories ski buddy and cottage neighbor, or sorry, maybe I should say chalet. Maybe they have chalets, not cottages. But this is the story of the year that I think is, in a dark sort of humor way, is the funniest thing, is that he just keeps appointing people that are his family relatives or Trudeau Foundation board members to investigate him for the wrongdoings that he's done.
I mean, as soon as Trudeau appoints anybody, the next thing you do immediately is you go to the Trudeau Foundation archives and you go see when whoever he just appointed was a fellow of the Trudeau Foundation, right? I mean, everybody he's appointed is like, actually, better yet, we can do it for you, Trudeau. Hang on, I'll tell you who you're going to appoint next. Let me just look at the archives. You haven't appointed Henry Brown. Apparently, he was a fellow of the Trudeau Foundation in 1997. But yeah, I know and again, it's lost on him, right? I mean, he will spin it in his head like, the Aga Khan is a long family friend. The guy, the former, well, the special rapporteur was really bad. I mean, Trudeau appoints him, which is embarrassing. But the fact that the former governor general accepted, like, the whole idea of reclusing yourself doesn't exist anymore, right?
No.
And then nobody wants to take the fall for, like, I mean, my funny story of the year is the fall guy. My funny story of the year to me is the Speaker of the House. I mean, inviting a Nazi, like, that was, it's recent, but it's one of the funniest chapters in history. Like when the Speaker was reading and he's like, with us today, he took the fall. The Speaker genuinely took the fall. And so bravo for that. But I've never, that's so rare now. Everybody, I mean, there was just recently, the lady who wouldn't recluse her, she was the director in charge of one of the programs. I can't remember. And they're like, well, the company you represent got $250,000. And she's like, yeah, but if I excuse myself, then they wouldn't have the money. I'm like, lady, that's how it works. Like, that's how it works. Like, that's that's how it works. They're not supposed to get them.
She gave 3 of her own company's contracts, evidently.
Yeah.
And that was the thing. She was saying, like, well, I only gave 3 of my companies, like, as if to say, well, I'm only a little corrupt. I'm not, like, totally corrupt, but
no. And that's where I was getting at. So now the bar's been set so low that somebody's like, well, no, I'm not resigning. Frank didn't resign when he blew $1 billion, and Catherine McKenna didn't resign when she blew $4 billion. And so the bar is so high, nobody's going to recluse themselves. Judges are like, I'm not reclusing myself, so what if I know him and I know her? And no, it's embarrassing. Yeah, who stepped down? The Speaker of the House, Han Dong.
Well, and he only stepped down from the Liberal Party, so he became an independent, and he's still holding his seat as an MP.
Chiefs of police aren't stepping down. Actually, the commissioner, did he step down? I don't know the whole story, but some guy hired to make recommendations on how to reform the RCMP. He stepped down last week, but he didn't step down because of corruption. That's a guy who's genuinely appointed, had a job to do, and he's like, forget it, I'm not doing this. It's too, the government's too corrupt. And I've, within 3 days of looking into how to reform the RCMP, the guy's like, I'm throwing my hands up, I don't give a shit. And so you're talking guys, like, when private sector guys that get to see what's going on, I mean, I've said it myself once in a while, why fight him? Why not just join him? I mean, I could do it, right? Like, I have a small company. I could just go through the procurement process of the government and then look for lucrative contracts and just, bid a contract and do a shitty job and pocket $3 million. But I can't do it. I could never live with myself to do that. but apparently lots of people have no problem doing that.
No. Oh, and the grants that they give out to entertainers. But I mean, I could go get myself one of those checks for being a social media character that does the. Yeah, no, I couldn't live with myself either. I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't do it.
Yeah. No, and the guy who interviewed Trudeau, I'm guessing that, somebody's going down through the Rolodex trying like, who's going to interview Trudeau and be semi-nice to him? Would you be nice to Trudeau if you were called right now and somebody said, hey, Clyde, would you do a year-end interview with Trudeau? I bet you'd do a good job.
I would
try to do a good job.
I would do one. Yeah, I would do one, and I wouldn't shout at him or any of that stuff. But I'd be. I suppose there's a difference between being rude and being cordial, but truthful.
Yeah.
Saying exactly what you need to say. But if I was to interview, it's not my job to scold him. It would be my job to basically just say, no, that's not true. This is what you've done. Like, look at it. Look at this. Look at this. Here's what what was going on here.
Oh, God. Yeah, no.
It's hard to keep your cool in an interview with him, though.
Yeah, well, I'm not gonna lie. I'd have a hard time keeping my cool with him because I have a hard time with people who just won't answer. Right? What color is the sky? It's like, well, we think Canadians believe that the sky is white. I didn't ask you what you think Canadians think. What color is the sky? Well, we've spoken to Canadians, and Canadians like to think that. No, I don't like those kinds of answers. Yeah, 2023 was okay. I mean, I will definitely remember some of the comedy of 2023, but to me, 2023 couldn't come early enough. I mean, I was despaired in 2022. I really thought COVID would never end. The madness of COVID, I didn't think would ever end. 2023 was finally turning the page on COVID. Do I wish that more people were held accountable for the bad decisions made during COVID? Absolutely. But I sense that Canadians want to move on after that. So I'll remember 2023 as the year the COVID ended, as the year that Trudeau lost the big time his popularity, that we finally elected a conservative leader, Poilievre, that, not that Scheer and the others were bad. I think they were, nobody wants to be the breakup girlfriend, whatever. So, no, I mean, it's the same thing in politics, right? You don't want to be the first leader after Harper. Those guys had a tough challenge. We needed to go through a couple of leaders. So 2023, I'll remember as a year that Poilievre finally came out of his shell. We got the economy was bad. I think there's a solution. I think we need to elect the Conservatives, and the Conservatives have a tough job ahead of them. And I hope Canadians will be smart enough to appreciate that it needs to be done. That's where I fear. I fear that that we can go back to some really bad habits really quickly in this country.
I think for me, the year 2023 was a revolutionary new year in the world. I think this was the year that people started waking up to the ideas of liberty and started waking up from this slumber, this socialistic slumber of just getting stuff because there was, leftover equity or capital to consume in the Western world. And we're starting to realize that we've consumed all that capital, thrown it away at TVs and goodies and clothing and things like that. And none of it was ever worth the while. And now we've lost a lot of our civil liberties, and people are starting to want them back. And I like that. I think that's a good direction that we're going. Watching Argentina move towards libertarianism, watching the Netherlands move towards a farmers' party, watching Germany right now, their farmers are in revolt, watching France grow a brain and their farmers sticking up for their farmers. So I think this is a good promise towards the future. We even saw Klaus Schwab lamenting about this rise in libertarianism, which I think is great. If he's publicly saying that he's afraid of it, then we're on the right track.
Totally. Yeah. Maybe, maybe humanity did learn a couple of lessons. I mean, we've talked about that, right? If you fail to learn from history, you're bound to repeat it. Maybe in a sense, we did learn some big lessons, and we didn't have to have a world war that lasted 5 years, and we didn't need to kill 400 million people to appreciate that something we have was about to get lost. So maybe we did learn some lessons, about the importance of freedom and things like that. I mean, yeah, my boys were talking about that over the holidays. I don't know how they got on the topic. Well, they got on the topic because, like I said, I have a nephew who lives in Germany now, and he's been there for a couple of years, and it's an eye-opening for him to come back here. They talked about that, how my son's had a hard time fathoming the fact that Europe was at war for 5 years and people really suffered. So I guess in their mind, they're justifying that what we just went through for the last few years wasn't so bad. I mean, I'd like to hope that we shouldn't even have to have anything bad. We should just learn the lessons and not need a hard reminder. But I'm gonna use the last 3 years to tell myself it was just a reminder that we needed. Sad that we still need reminders, but it's better than killing 400 million people and destroying entire cities. We did a lot of damage, though. Don't get me wrong. We did a lot of damage.
We still have our work ahead of us, because if we don't, then we could lose a lot of people. I mean, totally. The writing was on the wall for Venezuela, and they went towards socialism anyway. And look what happened overnight. They went from being a wealthy society to breaking into the zoo to eat the animals. I mean, it does happen that quick. It can happen that quickly. So we're not out of the weeds yet, but we're wising up. And I think enough of us wising up at the right time, at the right opportune moments, especially going into 2024 with an American election coming up this year, with possible Canadian election coming up this year. And if it doesn't happen this year, it is definitely happening the year after. We're in interesting times, my friend.
Totally. Actually, we got to leave soon because we're jumping on another podcast. But I guess what happened in Colorado last week to Trump, New York voted against it. So another state tried to do the same thing, right? To disqualify Trump from the ballot based on the 14th Amendment. And then New York this week said they wouldn't hear anything about it. So Trump is on the ballot in New York. He's not and he's still technically on the ballot in Colorado. Colorado said, if it was up to them, they would not let him on, but they're not going to rule anyways. We're in for an interesting year in 2024, man. We are in for an interesting year.
Yeah.
Hopefully. Yeah. Cool.
Hopefully it works out well. Anyway, I want to wish everybody a Merry Christmas and a happy holiday and Happy New Year. Whatever you celebrate it well, and celebrate it with good people that you love in your lives.
Happy Festivus, if that's what you're into.
All right.
Thanks, Clyde. It's been a great year, man. We're going to keep doing this into the new year. But Merry Christmas and Happy New Year to you and your family too, man. It's been an awesome year for us.
Likewise, my man. And let's get over to that other podcast. If you guys didn't check it out already by this time, I'll leave a link in the description down below. We'll be on Northern Perspective. We're guests on a big show. If you missed it, by the time you're seeing this, you'll be able to catch the podcast afterwards, the recorded version. So head on over there. And don't forget to check out Marty Up North. Links, as always, in the description down below. Happy New Year.
Cheers, folks.